Do you ever get in your Toyota Supra, get in and turn the key to the start position and nothing? I think the better question might be, do you own a Supra and you've never had this happen to you? Yeah, pretty common problem. Hundreds and hundreds of web pages have been dedicated to this problem. My car is no different. Seems like the biggest problems I would usually have would be the first start in the morning. Usually after that, didn't give me as much trouble. So if I knew I was going to drive the car, I'd put the battery charger on the battery and make sure it was charged up really well. Usually that worked, not always. Other times, I might have driven the car for an hour and a half. Stopped to get a drink at a convenience store, get back in the car, it won't start. Now you start thinking, oh my goodness, is the alternator working? Is the charging system not charging my battery? All kinds of thoughts going through your head. What might be wrong? Occasionally, I figured out that I could sometimes, push forward. I have an automatic transmission. I could push forward on the gear selector. Of course, the old one was completely worn out from the previous owner. Shifting it manually because the TPS sensor wasn't working. But anyway, I could push on this a little bit, turn the key with my left hand, and the car would sometimes start. Sometimes I could put it in neutral. Sometimes it would start. Sometimes it didn't matter what I did. This son of a gun was not going to start. Near the height of this thing acting up, my oldest son needed to borrow the car for a while. So in true understanding electrical engineering dad, I did what any good dad would do. I gave him the ultimate get out of jail free card. Because everybody knows what it's like to be a young 20-something and on your way to go somewhere to meet your friends or go to work and the car won't start. I taught my son, like any good electrical engineering dad would do, how to remove the wire from the starter and use this jumper wire to jumper between the positive battery cable to the solenoid switch. And I'm telling you, all you had to do was turn the key to the on position. This was going to fire that starter off for every single time. This was a no-fail. This worked every single time. Our starter turned over fantastically. So that's a guaranteed reason why we also know that the problem is in our circuit that feeds that solenoid. Okay? The problem is not in the battery. The problem is not in the cable to the battery. The problem is the circuit that feeds the starter solenoid. I want to go over that with you today. I want to show you that circuit. I want to show you where all the components are, how to bypass most of them for testing purposes only. But first, I want you to hear what my car sounds like when I turn it over. I actually have the EFI plug unplugged, so I don't want it to start actually. But I have the radio on. We're gonna go ahead and put the fan on high. I'm gonna even turn the lights on. Okay? Let's see what she sounds like when I turn it over. Ready? Sounds pretty good, huh? Yeah. That's the way your car should sound every time. I've left this car sitting for 3 weeks and I know the battery's drained down quite a bit and it sounds exactly like that starting it. Okay? So, let's alleviate you of your problems. Let's fix this. Let's go over this circuit real quick. I've drawn out the circuit of the starting system for you. It's really pretty simple. In all reality, it's pretty simple, guys. It all starts at your battery. The positive side of your battery is going to go through your first fusible link, which as far as I can tell, that must be somewhere within your wiring, because there's no physical component underneath your hood that you can remove to find this, okay? It's got to be in the wire. Your second component is another fusible link labeled 1.25B. I don't even know what that means, but I'll show you that. It's in your fuse box underneath the hood. And we go through another fusible link called AM1. amperage rating on these varied for different years, but they're still called AM1. That's also in that same fuse box with this fusible link. From there, the voltage, if you don't have voltage here, there's basically nothing else in your car going to be working. All right, so very doubtful that any of these things are wrong. You would basically have nothing working in your car if you didn't have these links all in good condition. From there, we go to the ignition switch. I've only shown the start portion of the ignition switch. So when we turn the key all the way to the start position, that will close these contacts, allowing the voltage to pass through. Okay? Once it passes through, depending on if you have an automatic or a manual transmission, if you have an automatic, that voltage will continue straight through to the starter relay. If you have a manual transmission, that voltage will first pass through your clutch safety switch. I can't show you that because I don't have a manual transmission car, but that's going to be mounted, physically mounted on your clutch pedal. When you push it all the way in, it will close this switch. Okay? When that switch closes, it will send voltage down to the starter relay, just like the automatic. I'm sure you can easily disconnect this connector from here and put a bypass jumper in to temporarily see if this is your problem if you have a manual transmission car. Obviously, without this connected and you jumper it, that means you can start the car in gear, and that's very dangerous. So don't leave a jumper wire in, but it can help you in troubleshooting if you need to, if you have a manual transmission car. So once we make it past both of those points, we have the 12 volts again coming in and doing two things here at our starter relay. It is actually giving 12 volts to the coil to energize the relay, and it's also branched over and feeding the contacts of the relay. Okay? When the coil energizes, the contacts close, allowing the voltage to pass through the starter relay. The ground side of the relay is controlled by your theft deterrent system, if you have a theft deterrent system in your car. As long as your car is not trying to be stolen, as long as it doesn't think it's trying to be stolen, this set of contacts will be closed, which will mean it will allow the ground wire to pass through and energize the starter relay. The majority of our intermittent problems are this right here. The real crazy stuff where you just drove it and started fine, you got in it and it didn't. That comes from this. I'm going to show you a method to bypass this easily, but there's also tons of write-ups on how to permanently bypass what's called your theft deterrent system. Okay, this box is mounted up underneath, right on top of your steering column, up underneath the dash. Strongly suggest you follow the other guidelines on how to remove this connector, jumper the correct pins, and completely eliminate this system from your car. This is the most schizophrenic system ever. Be happy you got rid of it. Okay, this is not the final solution, unfortunately. Okay, but strongly suggest you get rid of this, I call it schizophrenic alarm. This car would just be sitting outside with nobody around it, and the alarm would start going off. I could get out of the car, not lock it, have the windows down, go pull up the handle on the door lock, and the alarm would go off for no reason. So get rid of this thing. It doesn't work. The little tiny micro switches that are on your door locks and door handles are just crummy. Okay, so once we get the starter relay energized, that voltage will now continue to pass through, and once again, it will differ if you have either an automatic or manual transmission. Straight through that manual, if you have a manual, it's straight through to your starter solenoid. If you have an automatic, then it's going to go through the contacts of your neutral safety switch down on your transmission. I'm going to show you where those wires are. So once again, you can do like the clutch safety switch. I'm going to show you where you can put a jumper wire in to bypass this. Because if it's completely dead, no matter what you do to anything else, it's not going to work. The car's not going to start. I'll show you the easy way of doing this. Same thing though. You can't, this is just temporary. You cannot leave this in place because this will allow you to start the car and drive or reverse. And we don't want to do that. You can easily get hurt or hurt somebody else. So I'll show you the temporary way. And I'm definitely going to show you the way to bypass this. Okay? The starter relay. This is your starter relay. Looks just like this. Okay? This is mounted down inside your passenger kick panel. I'm going to show you down there where this goes. You can see you have to remove a couple of panels off underneath the glove box and the side kick panel. In automatic transmission, you have to take a couple bolts to remove the computer for the transmission. Just lower it down out of the way. And behind there is going to be this guy. Canadian cars do not use this. I don't know why, but they completely bypass this. I'm going to show you the simple way to bypass this. That not only bypasses this relay, it also bypasses your theft deterrent switch. Okay? So even though I strongly suggest you getting rid of this and doing that method completely, getting rid of this, what I'm going to show you is a simpler way. By bypassing the starter switch, we'll bypass both of these items. Okay? And as far as the neutral safety switch goes, like I told you, I used to be able to push on this handle and sometimes get it to work. So I thought maybe that was my problem. I took the entire switch off the transmission, which is not easily done. The exhaust is all in your way. Took the whole switch apart, cleaned all the old dried up dielectric grease out of it, polished all the different contacts that are going on inside that guy, put all new dielectric grease in there and put it back together, put it on the car, and guess what? It didn't solve anything. Okay? It just didn't. The whole problem, guys, what I'm going to tell you in a whole nutshell, I'm still going to walk around the car and show you all these items, but the whole problem is going to be this. Right here. If you test with a voltmeter the final wire, pull that wire going off to the solenoid of your starter, and you hook the positive side of your voltmeter to this and the negative side to ground, and you are getting less than your battery voltage, okay? Even after I've jumpered the switch, jumpered the starter relay, jumpered the clutch, what else is left? Okay? There's nothing else left but the ignition switch. And this is where the problem is. 99% of us, this is the problem. Okay? Think of how many tens of thousands of times this car has been turned over that switch. And what happens is these contacts just get a corrosion from the... If you ever watch a set of contacts, when they actually make contact, they're fine. But when they release the contact, a little tiny arc comes out of electricity. Every time that arc comes out, it creates a little pitting to those contacts. Over time, that pitting means it doesn't make a good contact anymore. So we're not getting a good voltage through our contacts of our ignition switch. They're very, very relatively inexpensive, and this is what it looks like. You have a harness that connects in the back, and you have one screw that holds this onto the back of your key switch. Okay, it's pretty easy to do. The hardest part about getting to that switch is all of your panels that you have to take off to get to it behind here. Okay, all right, I want to just walk through and show you where these guys are, and I want to show you very close up where that starter relay is and how to jumper it. Okay, excuse me one second. Let me get this hood open. Like I said, all starts here at your battery. Definitely have to have a good main battery cable going all the way down to your starter, okay? This is very important. And you also have to have a very good connection coming off your battery that feeds these two main wires here. This right here feeds all of the electricity to your car. This small wire feeds all of the electricity in to your car from the battery and out to the battery from the alternator. All goes through that one wire. So it has to be a very good connection here. Like I said, somewhere in that wire has got to be that first fusible link, because I don't know where else it is. This is your first one, what they call, sometimes they call it alternator. This is the 1.25B. You cannot pull this relay out. This is literally got nuts on with lugs. You have to remove this whole assembly out and take the nuts off to be able to get this relay, this fusible link out. Here's your second fusible link, AM1, right here. This one you can remove. Okay, you can actually see if it's damaged inside. This is just not going to go bad, this stuff. Unless you had a major short circuit somewhere in your wiring, these are not going to be bad. Okay, like I said, from there, that goes directly to the ignition switch from there. Okay, out of that ignition switch, it goes to the starter relay. Let me show you this. I'm trying to get some light on this so you can see. It's kind of dark in here. Underneath your kick panel, you can see right there, that jumper wire that I have on that connector, that is where your starter relay should be plugged into, okay? And you see there's 4 terminals on that relay. You can put a jumper like I've made there, just like the one I showed you earlier with those spade terminals on it. Connect that into the far 2 left terminals. This will be just like a Canadian car. Okay, this bypasses your starter relay, and it also keeps the theft deterrent system from keeping your car from starting. Okay, does 2 things for you. So it eliminates 2 of your possible problems. Even though, like I said, most likely your problem's in the ignition switch, but that is still it. Okay, so now if you have an automatic car, once it comes through the starter relay, now it goes to the neutral safety switch. Alright, so I want to show you that wiring, because this was one of my troubleshooting methods was to bypass this. And it's way down deep in here on the driver's side, way down deep underneath your intake manifold. It's going to be a set of 3 wiring harnesses here, okay? There's going to be 2 that are round and 1 that's kind of rectangular. The one round one on my car, anyway, some of these plug colors may change over the years, is the off-colored white one, not the real white one. The off-colored white one, like me, has 3 wires in it. You'll see in there, one's a black with white, one's a black with lavender. That's the 2 wires that feed your starter contacts in the neutral safety switch. So all you have to do is unplug that connector and hook a jumper wire between those 2 wires, the 2 large wires. There's 1 smaller red wire in there. Don't connect onto that one. Only the 2 larger wires. That will bypass your neutral safety switch. After all of that, the only really other thing that you could have that's possibly wrong is either your connector being damaged where it connects into your starter motor, which is, let me see, way down there. You can see it, way down there. There's your starter motor, okay? The only other problem I've had was early on, I didn't trace all this stuff down. I just assumed it was a starter motor, so I changed the starter motor. If you ever done that on this car, so this will test your absolute patience. And if you're anything but scrawny arm like me, I don't know how you even do it. It's so pain in the neck to get those bolts loose on this early car. But anyway, I put a new starter in. Heck, my problem got worse. So I pulled the starter back out, and I found out that where the main battery cable comes on and you have that nut that screws onto that lug. Well, turns out that internal to the cover of that starter, that lug was not tight inside. Great, right? What you get with a remanufactured starter. This is why they don't work sometimes. Stupid stuff like that. I just tightened it back up, put it back on. I never had any more problems out of the starter. You just heard it try to start. It's the same one I've had on for many, many years. They really don't go bad. So probably likely your problem is not going to be in your starter. Number 1 starting point in this whole thing, in my opinion, should be replacing your ignition switch. It's done a ridiculous amount of work over all these years. The contacts in it are not very good. You come and take this solenoid wire off of your starter, hook your voltmeter to it, and you're probably going to get maybe like 11.5 volts or something like that. But you'll have over 12 on your battery. And that's not even a really good check, because you're really not putting a load onto that wire. It's not connected to the solenoid itself. So you really, if you check that voltage while it was plugged into the solenoid, it would be even much less. That's how much less electricity you're actually losing through your ignition switch. Okay, guys? Enjoy your Supra. Excuse me. It's a horrible feeling to have everything, you've done all your work, and you get out and this stupid thing won't start. Showing you the circuit, you can trace it all down very easily, showing you how to bypass each thing to solve your problems. Do not add the external relay like it's been told by many people and a lot of things to get around this problem. The reason I say that, because they're using that solenoid voltage to energize a relay out here in the engine bay, and they're using battery voltage to feed directly through the contacts of that relay to the starter. It works. I almost considered this myself when I had so much trouble. The problem with this is a safety factor. If you turn the ignition key off, not from the start, but those contacts weld shut, and this can definitely happen. Trust me, I have seen it in all my years of electrical work. That means your starter's going to keep turning regardless of you having the key off, and you don't want that to happen. This is the safety issue with adding the external relay. You already have a relay. You don't even need it. You can bypass it. Okay? Problem's going to be in your ignition switch. Okay? Appreciate your time. Thanks so much for watching. See you guys.